What's going on YouTube? Now throughout recent memory, Acura has only been selling 2 crossovers, but both of them have been very successful. This RDX is perhaps the greatest success story since sales have shot up 30% over last year, taking it but a handful of units from the top spot in the class. So that's why we're out at Courtesy Acura today to check out the latest 2020 version and see if they made any additions to the already winning formula. So with that said, let's see why customers have been flocking to the RDX. So getting started here with the exterior. Obviously there's not been any significant changes since it was just radically reinvented a year ago. That means up front we find Acura's latest rendition of the Diamond Pentagon grille, which is almost the same across all models except for the A-Spec where the chrome is blacked out, in addition to the lower areas and the headlight lenses. Beyond that aspect, the lights themselves are the same, being dual-eye fully LED across the lineup. Additionally, on the A-Spec and Advance, you will find fog lights at the bottom. Checking out the rest of the styling, it's got an athletic look to it, with a side body line that sweeps right into the taillights. The lights themselves have an interesting boomerang shape, and they are fully LED except for the incandescent turn signal. Of course, just like in the front, the A-Spec does darken out the rear lenses, plus enlarges the standard dual exhaust outlets. So overall, the RDX does a better job than many of the rivals at striking a balance between being too aggressive and too boring. They also don't penalize you for going with a lower trim, like in the case of this best-selling Technology, whose 19-inch wheels actually look better than the 19s on the Advanced trim, in my opinion. Even the base model does come with 19-inch alloys, and the A-Spec will come with the largest wheels at 20 inches. Heading on up to the mirrors, they are heated and power adjusting across the trims, but the blind spot monitoring system located on the inside pillar is not included on the base model. However, as far as all the other safety systems, they are standard across the board. That means every RDX comes with forward emergency braking, lane keeping assist, adaptive cruise control with low speed follow, and automatic high beam headlights, which is something that the more expensive German rivals cannot say. Finally, wrapping up the outside, we have 1,500 pounds of towing capacity and a 17.1 gallon fuel tank. That tank can be filled with either regular or premium fuel and allows for ranges of 410 miles with front wheel drive or 393 miles with the super handling all-wheel drive system. But anyways, that's it for all the exterior details. So now let's go ahead and hop inside and check out the cabin. So every version of the RDX does come standard with Acura's smart entry system, as well as their very nice feeling key fob with real metal trim along the bottom. Remote start abilities are not available via the fob, but they are available through the Acura Link app, free for 6 months. Now to get inside the vehicle, it is very simple. All you gotta do is just reach behind the handle since there is a sensor. Alright, so checking out the cabin of the 2020 RDX. Of course, this was just fully redesigned last year with a totally ground up design for Acura, and that does carry over for 2020. Now as far as your colors and materials are concerned, Acura does give you a lot of different choices. So only your base model is going to come with leatherette seating. That's in parchment, gray stone, or black. However, as soon as you go up to the Technology model, which is what this one is, or the Advanced trim, you're going to have the real Milano leather in those same 3 colors, plus an additional option of espresso. Now when you go for the A-Spec, that gives you some really cool options. You have Milano leather with the ultra suede inserts in either ebony or the really cool red color. Now as far as your door trim is concerned, it is also very high quality. So as you can see, almost the entire thing is covered in leather with the color contrast stitching. And then once on the technology model and up, you have this really nice speaker grille, as well as the real aluminum trim. Definitely looks very attractive. Now you do have 2-person memory seating, surprisingly standard across all of the trims. And then all 4 of your windows are one-touch automatic. Heading down here to your seats, these are the standard 12-way power adjusting seats. They come on all of the trims except for the Advance, which bumps that to 16 ways, gives you like power thigh extension as well as power bolsters. Then like I was saying, this is the real Milano leather. It feels fantastic. Also really nice and attractive design. You would get additional color contrast piping if you go for the Advanced trim. So like I already mentioned, the RDX really represented a turning point for Acura in terms of interior design. And they did really upgrade the interior materials as well. So across your upper dash, you do have a soft touch plastic. And then moving down here to your lower area, you've got this nice leather trim, as well as a piece of real brushed aluminum. This would be changed out for a open pore olive wood if you go for the Advanced trim. And then all your other materials are also very nice. You've got all this leatherette through here where your knee would touch. And the build quality in here is phenomenal. Of course, all models do come standard with push button start. And when you press that, you will see the brand new Acura Touch system fire up. This is a 10.2-inch display, and we'll get into the software a little later in the video. Now as far as your gauges, just like about everything else in this cabin, they are a new design for Acura. So you've got your analog tachometer and speedometer, and then a 7-inch multi-function display here in the middle. Now as far as the controls, that's the same as in other Acura models. You just have this little roller here on the steering wheel, and you can just flip through all the different types of information, including for your super handling all-wheel drive system. Now we don't have it here on this technology model, but if you opt for the Advanced model, then you have a 10-inch head-up display. Now coming back to the steering wheel, of course we do have electric power assisted steering, and every single model does come with this nice leather wrapped steering wheel. Up here we've got our controls for our traditional audio, phone, and voice commands. And then on this side, like I said, we have a multi-function display, as well as our adaptive cruise control and some of our safety systems. If you go for the Advanced model, you will also find rain sensing wipers. As far as the steering wheel itself, it is manually tilt and telescoping across the range. However, it will also be heated when you go for the Advanced model. But anyways, moving on to interior storage. Just like pretty much any Honda product, they absolutely kill it. So starting out with your center console here, this itself is not super large, but it is very deep. However, you slide back this aluminum tray here, and you will find your 2 cup holders, as well as another large bin, good for sticking a cell phone or whatnot. And then you do also have your port where you plug in for the Apple CarPlay system. However, the big thing is that we actually have this huge pass-through. So you got all this open space where you can store just about anything. And then you will also find another 12-volt outlet, an aux jack, and a second USB port. Now Acura is able to give us all this space because they have opted to use an electronic shifter. Now this operates the same way as it does in other Acura and Honda products. So all you gotta do is just press this D for drive, and then you can press this one more time to activate the sport mode, where you can shift via the standard paddle shifters. Of course, to go into reverse, all you gotta do is pull back on this trigger. And when you do, you will find a standard backup camera pull up on all models. As you can see, we do have the active trajectory as well as the parking sensors. And then we have a few different views that we can switch between as well. Now if you go for the top end advanced model, that's going to come with a 360-degree camera. And additionally, the mirrors do tilt down when in reverse to help you see the parking lines better. Now since the redesign gave it a newfounded athleticism, Acura has put our dynamic mode controller right here in a big central spot. This basically just changes your drive modes. So as you can see, we do have quite a few. We have a snow mode, a comfort mode, a sport mode, and a sport plus mode. Each one both changes the animations up here, as well as changes what is appearing in our multifunction display. And then off to the side here, this defeats your auto start-stop system. Now moving on up a little bit higher on the dashboard, this is our standard dual zone automatic climate control. As you can see, it is very simple in operation. We just have two buttons here to adjust the temperature. We have our fan speeds here, as well as our zones right here, so you don't have to dig around in the display or anything like that to make adjustments. Additionally, underneath of that, we have automatic heated seats across all of the models, and then seat ventilation on the advanced trim only. Now one of the things I really appreciate about the RDX is that all but the very base model comes with the nice ELS sound system. We do have a couple less speakers here on the technology model. We have 12 versus 16 on the advanced and A-Spec. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and take a sample. Well, I have to say, I am extremely impressed by this sound system. Honestly, if I didn't have the spec sheet to know that this is missing some of the speakers, I would have thought this was the full-fledged top-end sound system. But anyways, now that brings us up to Acura's all-new infotainment system. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. So to start out with, if you're coming from a previous Acura product, there's two big differences with this system. First of all is the fact that there's only one screen instead of two screens. So we have one way up here and there's nothing down here. The second thing is that it is not a touch screen. Instead you have the touchpad, as you'd anticipate from the name. It uses what is known as a one-to-one relationship with the screen. So instead of scrolling around like you do on a laptop to move to the place you want to go, you actually just click into the segment that you're operating in. So heading back to our home screen here, this is where you can see a customizable list of different features of the system. Like I already mentioned, you just swipe to switch between the pages, and then if you go all the way over to the left hand side, this is where you can get to all of your applications. So it's worth mentioning that Apple CarPlay is supported on this system right now, here in the 2020 RDX, but currently Android Auto is not supported. However, Acura does say they're working on it and it will be available via a software update. Now moving on up, you're going to find two really nice standard equipment features. One of them is the frameless auto-dimming mirror with the HomeLink universal remotes built in across the range. And then the second one is that we actually have a standard panoramic moonroof. Like I said, this comes across all of the trims, and as you can see, the piece of glass comes seamlessly from the very front all the way to the very back. Definitely a nice feature to have included. But overall, I have to say, I'm still very, very impressed by the RDX's cabin, like I was last year. Not only is this a huge leap forward from what the previous RDX was like, This is also one of the nicest cabins in the class, especially when you take into account that this is a lower level technology model that has, frankly, a very affordable price tag. The seat and steering wheel do move back to help with easier entry and exit. Alrighty, now I'll go ahead and hand it off to my brother to finish up the rest of the cabin.
Alrighty, so checking out the rear seat of the 2020 Acura RDX, you are going to find a class competitive amount of space. You'll find 38 inches of both leg and headroom, which does put it on par with most of its main rivals like the Audi Q5. Now turning over here to the door trim, you do have a really nicely appointed one. So you do have a leather armrest with color contrast stitching going through that, as well as leather above that, and a soft touch plastic. Additionally, your door handle is a nice silver design, and your window is fully automatic. Now down below that, you do have some bottle storage. And turning over to the seat itself, you do have the same beautiful color contrast stitching as you do in the front with a nice piping. Now here in the center, Acura does give you plenty of features, so you will find these rear vents standard across all models, and down below that, you will also find 2 smart charging USB ports, which are standard on all but the very base model. Now turning over to the center armrest, it does fold down with cup holders inside. And up top, you do have this absolutely massive panoramic moonroof. I'm a really big fan of this moonroof. It's, like I said, it is absolutely massive, and it really helps to air out the cabin back here. Now off to the side, you do have some lighting, as well as an assist grip and coat hook. And coming down, like I said, in terms of space, this is on par with most of the rivals. So behind rear seating position, I probably have 7 to 8 inches of rear leg room, and my feet definitely don't have any trouble sliding up under the seat. And scooting over, even with it all the way back, I still have several inches of legroom to spare. But overall, this RDX's rear seat is an absolutely wonderful place to spend time. It really has a premium ambience back here, and there's a lot of space and comfort for the whole family. Now, of course, your seats do fold. All you have to do is look at this little lever, and they will fold down 60-40 split. Now coming around to the tailgate, it is power across all models, and if you go for the advanced trim, it is also hands-free. And once you get inside the RDX's trunk, you're going to find 31 cubic feet of space behind the second row seats, and that expands to 59 cubic feet if you fold them. Now once again, that does put it on par with most of the rivals, and actually a little bit ahead of the Mercedes GLC. Now like I said, there is plenty of room back here to store all of your items, and it is also finished very nicely as well. So up under the floor, one of my favorite features is that you actually have a large storage bin under here. It probably goes about a foot deep, and it's actually quite wide, so you could hide a lot of stuff back here. And off to the side, you have another little storage pit, as well as handles to fold the seat backs. Now coming over to the passenger seat, you do have power adjustment on all models, so it's 16 ways on the advanced model, or 12 ways on all the other trims. Now as far as your features, you do have a nice glove box. As you can tell, there is plenty of space. It goes back quite a ways. And up top, You have a sun visor with a mirror and light. And it does also detach and extend. But anyway, guys, that covers all the practical stuff of the RDX. So now let's go ahead and get on the road and see how it drives out there.
Alright, so let's go ahead and talk a bit about the powertrain. So the first generation RDX, it came with a Turbo 4, switched to a V6, and now with this new generation, we're back to a Turbo 4 like most of the rest of the class. This Turbo 4 is actually more powerful than a lot in the class, at 272 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. That power is going to be routed through a 10-speed automatic transmission. And you compare that with front-wheel drive or the super handling all-wheel drive system across all of the different trims. Now the super handling all-wheel drive is optional for $2,000, and it's dynamic torque vectoring like it is in the other models, so you can send up to 70% of the torque to the rear wheels. And then finally, for your fuel economy, you're looking at very class competitive numbers. So for your front-wheel drive model, it's going to be rated at 22 city, 28 highway, 24 combined. And then your super handling all-wheel drive is going to give up 1 mpg from each of those numbers, so 23 combined. Now it is worth noting, if you choose the A-Spec, the differences in the wheels and other aerodynamic bits is going to further make you lose 1 mpg from either that front-wheel drive or the super handling all-wheel drive number. But anyways, this car gets good reception as far as what other people have said, so let's go ahead and take it on a drive and see if it lives up to the hype. So first, taking off here in the 2020 Acura RDX, I'm definitely very impressed by that power.
Wow.
Straight off the line. Really, it comes on strong. Definitely has plenty of torque. And it delivers it in a smooth and refined way as well. Not entirely sure what the 0 to 60 is to be able to compare that to some of the other rivals like the Germans. But I know one of the faster cars is the Audi Q5. That's 5.8 seconds 0 to 60, I believe. It's under 6 seconds, and this feels pretty much in line with that. This is one of the faster options.
Getting it up to highway speed, this is really where a car like this shines. You know, crossovers, especially in this class, the luxury crossover segment, they're meant to be extremely comfortable, and this car definitely rides extremely smooth. This is a super rough road. I don't know if you could tell or not, but it is horribly rough and really loud, and this car handled it extremely well. I mean it's almost silent in here, and that road is, you know, absolutely beat to pieces. And, you know, you can just tell how comfortable and how Acura has spent a lot of time making it, you know, an ultimate family and luxurious experience.
Right off the bat here, starting to kind of go around some corners, I can already tell that this is one of the fastest steering setups I've experienced in this class. Definitely responds very quickly off center and has a very agile feel to it. Like, as you can see, as soon as I turn it, there's no dead space or anything like that. It definitely gives it a really fast and responsive feel that I appreciate in this class. Yeah, like Mason was saying, kind of cruising through this residential area on a rougher road, it really is extremely hushed in here. I mean, when you're just kind of relaxed and cruising, the engine, I can't hear it at all. Road noise, and especially wind noise, really just non-existent. I actually really like the note of the engine. It's kind of got like a raspy sound to the Turbo 4. It definitely, you know, has a little bit more of an enthusiastic sound than some of the other rivals, which kind of sound pained or strained when they're pushed. Like I said, it's kind of a raspy, pleasant note. Go ahead and give the dynamic mode knob a twist here, and we'll try out the Sport Plus mode. See what differences that makes in the behavior of the car.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it really gets after it. Definitely very aggressive on the transmission. I mean, I was barely, actually was not pushing onto the throttle that much to get that much reaction out of it. So it definitely, it goes for it when you put it in the Sport Plus mode. I can also feel the steering definitely tighten up here. Even more sensitive, and it's a lot heavier.
And also the gearing is a lot.
You can see it's resting all the way up here at 3,000 to really get me, keeping the turbo spooled up, basically, so that I can just go at it immediately without waiting for any type of turbo spool or anything like that. Very interesting. I honestly wasn't expecting kind of that. In,
you don't expect
like this,
that out of a luxury crossover.
Blipping, kind of a throttle blip. Yeah, definitely has some sporty pretensions.
I know. I'm very impressed. You know, a lot. I mean, this is even kind of outdoing some of the Germans in types of. From what I can tell, it seems like this is sportier than like the Audi Q5.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's. You know, right, I was going to compliment it and say that it feels kind of German, but really, you're right. The Audi Q5 is a little bit more sedate than this, actually, especially when we ramp it up here in the Sport Plus mode. The steering, for instance, is a lot heavier than in the Q5. You can also do some manual shifting as well. And then one last little thing I want to point out is that we actually, you know, this is not the A-Spec or anything, but Acura has kind of flattened off the side of the steering wheel and thickened it up, so it really feels good to grip. It has a good solid feel, kind of a, you know, like a sports car, a thicker rimmed steering wheel that's really uncommon for just a luxury crossover. imagine Sport Plus is not going to be the mode that most people would
Probably not.
use on a day-to-day basis, but it's definitely fun that it's there. But overall, I have to say I am certainly impressed by this RDX. I mean, the previous generation was rather bland.
Yeah.
Just to be honest, you know, and it just impresses me how big of a change that this generation of the RDX represents for the Acura brand. You know, like I said, they went kind of from the boring, sedate side of things. Now this is one of the more athletic offerings in the class, so it's definitely an A+ for me for the driving dynamics.
Now, as far as the pricing is concerned for the 2020 Acura RDX, you're going to find very competitive pricing for its class. Now, that said, it does have a $300 price increase over the 2019 model across all the trims. So that now means for the base model, that's going to start at $37,600. And if you want the technology, which is what we have here, that's going to start at $40,800. The A-Spec at $43,800. And the advanced model, which is the top-end trim, starts at $45,700. Now, it is worth noting that that is for the front-wheel drive model on all of those. So if you want SH all-wheel drive, that's going to be an additional $2,000 on top of all of those numbers. So all told, Acura doesn't really do options or anything like that. So for this particular model, this is the technology with SH all-wheel drive. It's going to come in at $43,795. Which is definitely a huge value for this segment. Drew and I were discussing this earlier. You know, a lot in this class, especially the German rivals, will be honestly about $10,000 more expensive if you equip them similarly. So this definitely has a huge value in its segment, and you're really not sacrificing much over those models.
Well guys, we've enjoyed watching this in-depth look at the 2020 Acura RDX Technology. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.